So, the translations are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 354, and if you didn't know, there's a big surprise at the end of this chapter with seeing certain characters fighting off against All For One, and you'll see exactly who they are right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my review of My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 354, titled Here, with apparently 2 to 3 exclamation marks. So you know it's going to be a very exciting chapter. And overall, I think this was a really strong and a really good chapter. Because primarily what this chapter was is just seeing the characters fighting off against All For One. But probably the best parts of this chapter is not the actual fighting, but the characterization of the characters, especially All For One. Because we get to see more into the minds of the heroes for why certain characters are here, and potentially the roles that other newer characters that we haven't seen in this fight will be playing a part in the defeat of All For One. So, let's dive more into this review proper and talk about the chapter. So the chapter pretty much starts off with Best Jeanist and Hawks pretty much discussing what the main objective is when it comes to defeating All For One. And that it's not a matter of physically beating All For One with full force and power, but breaking the mask that is covering his head. Because something that has been consistent throughout the story, if you've noticed it, is that All For One always wears a mask or some type of breathing apparatus. Whether he is fighting against All Might, whether he was in prison, whether he broke out of prison, whether he was in the cave, or even right now. He has always had something covering up his mouth, and it's most likely because of the damage that he sustained with All Might in their fight, like around 6 years ago, that he is unable to really breathe on his own and that his body can't really survive without something keeping him alive. So Hawks and Best Jeanist, as well as the other heroes' main goal to defeating All For One, the person, not the quirk, is to break the mask. So as long as they're able to do that, they're able to take down All For One, which explains why Hawks was able to go for the head at his first chance, because it wasn't to kill All For One necessarily, but to break the helmet. But unfortunately, All For One is very much aware of this, which leads into what most of this chapter is, just seeing them fighting against All For One, but more importantly, seeing more about how All For One fights. Because in this chapter, we get to see that he pretty much fights with certain quirks on his fingers. He's defending against attacks. When Hawks comes in with his feathers or Endeavor comes in with his flames, he tries to block them with his quirks or tries to intercept them and attack the heroes, to which he is not very successful. And you know what's interesting about this? All For One kind of knows this, because the heroes that are there are specifically fighting All For One in the sky to prevent him from taking advantage or really wiping out the rest of the heroes on the ground, and having Endeavor and Hawks, two of the top 2 heroes that are also some of the strongest heroes in the world, fighting against All For One is really putting him on the back foot. And All For One knows this, which is why we see in this chapter, he leans on the most All For One thing that he can do, throwing insults and causing his opponents to slip up. Because from what we've seen pretty much throughout the series, how All For One fights is not just doing full force, but using psychological manipulation, trying to get into his foe's head so that they would eventually make a mistake. Because he notices that Endeavor is not in the right mind and he tries to capitalize on it. He keeps poking at Endeavor, talking about how, oh, your failure was defeated by the thing that you sought out the most, and that you should be paying attention a little bit more. Everyone below us is fighting to their best, but you're not. Don't you think that that's a bad thing you're doing? All For One does like that, goading and trying to get Endeavor to make a mistake. And he also tries to do the exact same thing with Hawks, but Hawks is not a type of character that will fall for those taunts easily. And we get a similar Kamino moment in this fight of All For One taunting Endeavor, even though Endeavor is going full force against him to the point where he's not really able to defend against it. He brings up a piece of information that he knows will cause Endeavor to falter and it's information that we've known prior, and it's his involvement with the capture and the rehabilitation of Dabi, aka Toya. And the moment that he tells Endeavor this is the moment where he finally gets the chance to get a real solid hit off of Endeavor, cutting out and biting a chunk out of Endeavor's guts. So pretty much we're just seeing All For One at his most All For One, and that this works most against strong heroes who are either trying to change, who are fueled by their emotions like Endeavor, like All Might, and very much unlike Hawks. But we get to probably the most unexpected part of this chapter with the reveal that both Jiro and Tokoyami are there to support Endeavor and Hawks in the defeat of All For One by breaking his mask. Because we see in this chapter that Jiro is able to block an attack by All For One aimed at Hawks after Endeavor was taken out for a short amount of time, as we see that Tokoyami or Tsukuyomi as well as Earphone Jack aka Jiro are there to provide support, most likely than not, for Hawks to Hawks' rebuttal. And what's very interesting about this is that this was something that we knew that Tokoyami was going to be getting involved in this fight because he came to the area where Hawks was, but the fact that Jiro is here as well is very interesting, and it was something that I didn't predict was going to happen. And then while this is all happening, you just have Hawks being very concerned about these kids, and it's telling them that they can't stay here or they will die. But we see the convictions of both Tokoyami and Jiro, who are unwilling to leave, and that they will help support Hawks while also rebutting against All For One. Because as All For One talks about how side characters are only used to show how strong the Demon Lord is, Jiro responds with, "Isn't that a line that you should save after you've obtained victory, All For One?" And what is very interesting and amazing about this is that these are the same kids, these are the same students, not exactly, but in a sense, are the students who would have been afraid of All For One. Because the first instance any of the kids felt All For One's presence, they felt fear, they felt terror, they felt like they needed to run away. But now we see that these kids aren't afraid of All For One, and that they're willing to confront him as well as smack talk him as well. Just showing how much the experiences these kids have gone through have shaped them into the heroes that they are now, to the point where they are most likely than not capable of, at the very least, providing support to help Endeavor and Hawks actually finally break All For One's mask and potentially lead to his defeat. So yeah, this was just a pretty solid chapter of seeing just a lot of cool action and, weirdly enough, a fair amount of characterization when it comes to how All For One fights, as well as pointing out the character faults and the character flaws of both Hawks and Endeavor, specifically Endeavor when it comes to how emotional he can become when it involves his son Toya, and a soft confirmation that if he were to fight Toya aka Dabi, he most likely than not would have lost because he would have let his emotions overcome his judgment. So yeah, overall, really enjoyed this chapter. Really enjoyed just one funny moment with Jiro talking about how she's unable to fly on Tokoyami well, and Tokoyami responds with her not moving her butt that much. So it's just a lot of fun moments, but overall, a just real solid chapter. So yeah, what did you think of the chapter? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Do you want to see more of Jiro in the story? And do you think that Tokoyami as well as Jiro will be playing a major role in the defeat of All For One and the breaking of his mask? Or do you think that they're just going to be in the way of Endeavor and Hawks? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you liked it. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to see more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!